Hey, Ivan from the EV Stock channel here. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at third quarter EV sales from the United States, China and Europe. But before we begin, thank you to all the Patreons that make these episodes possible. And as always, none of this content is financial advice. And note, I use a number of different data sources to compile these episodes, and while I try my best, I cannot always guarantee their accuracy. Anyways, let's get started. Starting off with third quarter EV sales from the United States, where the Tesla Model Y and Model 3 again totally dominated the US EV market, while the refreshed Model S outsold every other non-Tesla EV. Looking at 2021 total sales, we can see that the numbers are quite similar. The only difference since the end of Q2 is that the Volkswagen ID.4 has surpassed the Nissan Leaf, while the Model S became the 7th best-selling EV in just 1 quarter of sales. And with that 1 quarter, it has already surpassed the Porsche Taycan. Let's now have a look at some individual manufacturers, starting off with Tesla. In Q3, Tesla's production came in at 237,000, which was up 64% from Q3 last year. Deliveries came in at 241,000, and other than the 73% year-over-year growth rate, one of the biggest takeaways from these numbers was that in Q4, Tesla is likely to hit an annualized production and delivery run rate of 1 million, which is going to be a heck of an achievement. General Motors, on the other hand, are recalling their Chevy Bolt vehicles, while at the same time, GM also announced that they are planning to build a $30,000 electric SUV, and get this, take the lead in EV sales. Interestingly, no timeline has been set to achieve this ambitious goal. GM has also announced that it will build an EV battery cell innovation center in Michigan. However, keep in mind, by the time they build, hire engineers, and do some research to find ways to optimize the technology, it could be 3 to 4 years before this investment starts to pay dividends for them. Meanwhile, Ford has announced that it will invest $11.4 billion with SK Innovation to build 3 battery factories and a new plant for electric pickup trucks. And on top of that, they signed a deal with Redwood Materials to recycle EV batteries. So let's wish them well, as the faster legacy auto electrify, the faster Tesla can accomplish their mission statement. And if we need another reminder as to why we need to transition away from fossil fuels as quickly as possible, check out this following story.
A race against time. Authorities frantically working to slow the spread of a major oil spill. A pipeline off the coast of Orange County in Southern California dumping 126,000 gallons of oil into the Pacific, spanning 13 square miles.
We are in the midst of a potential ecological disaster here.
A major concern, wildlife. Toxic globs washing ashore and infiltrating treasured wetlands. Health officials warning it could be harmful to humans, too. The goopy mess, a stain to Southern California's typically pristine beaches. But what you can't see, the awful smell. It will give you a headache in minutes. People are in the water. Does that concern you?
It does concern me. The toxic fumes are present in the air, and it might be impactful to your health.
Tonight, an ecological nightmare growing with each wave.
Next up, China, where Tesla has smashed through another record with 52,000 domestic deliveries in the month of September. We knew September was going to be big, as it was the final month of the quarter, but this is truly an impressive number. Expect to see similar numbers in the fourth quarter, as Tesla will be shipping vehicles from China to Europe in October and November, and then delivering another massive amount into the domestic market in December. Full breakdown of the numbers coming out of China to be released once production numbers come in, so stay tuned for that. Moving on to Europe, where Tesla delivered a new record of 45,600 vehicles in Q3, and this was made possible as Tesla started delivering China-made Model Ys to Europe for the first time. In the United Kingdom, Model 3 sales were in line with the previous few quarters. And when we observe the new vehicle market including ICE vehicles, we can see that the Model 3 is just a stone's throw away from the more established ICE brands like the Volkswagen Golf, Ford Fiesta, and the Mercedes A-Class. And with Tesla leading the way in the third quarter, the UK has now achieved an impressive feat of 15.2% of all new vehicles sold being electric. And to get a sense of how fast the growth has been, keep in mind it was only 2.2% in Q3 of 2019. So we are really seeing exponential growth in the adoption of electric vehicles. And unfortunately for those in the United Kingdom that decided to buy a combustion vehicle, they've had to deal with the following drama.
Anger, frustration, and panic in the UK as British drivers face a fourth day of long lines and shortages at gas stations.
I need fuel. I was meant to be at work at 8 o'clock. Look what time it is right now. It's terrible.
A shortage in truck drivers has triggered a wave of panic buying across the country, leaving many residents scrambling to fill up at the pump.
I'm only queuing because everybody else is queuing, is the honest.
A driver who jumped the queue at a London petrol station has been threatened with a knife, an escalation in violence amid the UK's fuel shortage crisis. The attacker is seen climbing onto the bonnet of the driver's car before ramming the vehicle.
The stench here is just horrific.
Things have been getting desperate here in Bradford. They arrived this morning to find the diesel had been drained from 2 community buses by thieves. Trips for school children and the elderly have been cancelled.
How dare they do something? This affects everyone in the community. It's purely selfish on their behalf.
Let's now have a look at Germany. The Model 3 has registered around 9,000 deliveries in Q3 according to the KBA, along with around 3,000 Model Ys delivered. So Tesla demand in Germany seems to be growing, and that's not going unnoticed. As this Talk article states, Herbert Diess, CEO of Volkswagen, recently invited Elon Musk to a 3-day company meeting to talk with VW management about the transition to sustainable energy. It takes humility for a CEO to invite their competition to a meeting and even take advice from him. So great humble move on Herbert Diess's part, and great to see Tesla helping out other manufacturers transition to EVs. Now, switching to Q3 total EV sales in Germany. And note, this data comes from EV volumes, so there's some slight differences from the previous data that I showed. However, we can still see the Model 3 was the top selling EV in Germany, ahead of the Volkswagen ID.3 and the Volkswagen e-up. And with a strong Q3, the Model 3 has now moved into top spot, dethroning the Volkswagen e-up in total 2021 EV sales, while the rest of the models are holding pretty steady. As for German EV penetration, well, it's been highly politicized in Germany as to when they should ban new internal combustion engines. But so far, penetration rates are looking good, with a record 17.1% of new EV sales in September being fully electric. In other news from Europe, EV sales have surpassed diesel vehicle sales for the first time ever. And let me explain why this is so significant. First of all, let's have a look at the main difference between a gasoline and diesel engine.
In an internal combustion engine, diesel or otherwise, fuel and air combine inside a cylinder chamber where they combust. The explosion pushes a piston which turns a crankshaft and ultimately turns the wheels that move a vehicle. In a typical gasoline engine, a spark plug ignites the fuel and air mixture inside the cylinder, but Rudolf Diesel determined that no spark was necessary. His design simply compressed the air in the cylinder to the point that the air was so hot it would cause the fuel to combust as soon as it was injected into the cylinder. Over time, their fuel-saving potential made them highly desirable choices in countries where governments were trying to reduce carbon emissions. Lower carbon dioxide emissions were one of the reasons the European Union began pushing the fuel in the 1990s.
In some markets, like in Italy, it got as high as 90%. Of the market was diesel engines. And Germany, France was also very popular.
Overall, diesel engines produce less CO2 than gasoline-burning engines, helped by the fact that they burn less fuel. However, they produce higher concentrations of other hazardous pollutants, especially nitrogen oxides, and very tiny particles commonly referred to as PM2.5. The European countries that embraced diesel considered it a trade-off, sacrificed some losses in air quality for gains in CO2 reduction. Many European countries put tax advantages in place to encourage diesel engine adoption. These incentives sent diesel car sales skyrocketing throughout Europe. But over time, cities such as Paris showed signs of dangerously high pollution.
Talk about a bad trade-off. Use a fuel that emits less CO2 but will reduce human life expectancy and cause disease. As mentioned, the combustion of diesel causes the production of nitrogen oxides and small particulates. And here's a reminder as to why these exhaust compounds are so detrimental to human health, starting with small particulates.
Poisonous particles that can be as small as a molecule. With every breath, they break through your lungs' protective barriers. There, they trigger inflammation as your system tries desperately to fight back. But these tiny intruders penetrate those defenses, lodging toxic compounds even deeper, sowing the seeds of cancer. They slide straight into your bloodstream, sabotaging your entire body. They inflame and constrict your blood vessels, increasing blood pressure until, one day, causing a stroke. With each new case of heart attack, stroke, lung disease, or cancer, air pollution adds another life to its hit list.
Remember, some Volkswagen vehicles were emitting almost 40 times more than the permitted levels of nitrogen oxides during and before the Dieselgate scandal.
All right, well, first, let's talk about ozone. We have to start with a little bit of the chemistry behind it. So you have your car here, and then you have the emissions that are coming out of the car. Within the emissions, we have this compound called nitric oxide, and actually through some natural processes, this becomes nitrogen dioxide. Well, during the daytime, what happens is sunlight will actually interact with this molecule and split a little oxygen off of it. Then this will go through the cycle again and start repeating, and we'll just continue to get these little individual oxygen atoms. That combines with normal oxygen in the atmosphere, and that forms ozone.
Ozone is nasty.
A lot of people compare ozone to a sunburn on the lungs.
Because when you breathe it in, it irritates and inflames all of your air passageways, your nose, throat, and lungs.
So this is why I'm personally so excited to see less diesel vehicles. Moving on to Norway, and it wasn't too long ago that many bears used Norway as proof to justify their faulty narrative that Tesla was running out of demand and the competition had finally arrived. Well, fast forward to Q3 2021, Tesla has set a new record for deliveries in Norway, with 4,873 Model Ys being delivered, along with almost 3,000 Model 3s, so demand is looking strong. However, until Giga Berlin gets to volume production, expect to see lumpy sales in Norway in the coming quarters. When looking at Norway's EV market for the full year, the Tesla Model 3 is still leading the way, while the Ford Mustang Mach-E has moved into third place and the Model Y has moved into fourth place, with just 1/4 of deliveries, while the Audi e-tron has slipped down 2 places to fifth. Another eye-opening record that Norway was able to achieve in Q3 was hitting 77.5% of all new cars sold being fully electric, with reports coming out that Norway could achieve 100% electric vehicle sales by early 2022. In Sweden, Tesla has also set a record delivering over 2,200 vehicles with the arrival of the Model Y. In total 2021 EV sales in Sweden, the Volkswagen ID.4 leads the way from the Kia Niro, which recently moved into second place and ahead of the Tesla Model 3, which has now dropped into third place. Also note, as of Q3 2021, EVs now make up 1/3 of all new vehicle sales in Sweden. The final country we're going to be looking at is the Netherlands, and again, this market has been quite lumpy as sales have soared at times of major government incentives and have been subdued in the following months. So what are the top selling brands? Well, in 2021 so far, it's been the Kia Niro that has just moved into top place ahead of the Skoda Enyaq, while the Ford Mustang Mach-E takes third spot ahead of the Volkswagen ID.4 and the Tesla Model 3. As for EV penetration in the Netherlands, September's numbers came in at 21%, however, those numbers were down from a year earlier. But in summary, the trend of EV adoption is rising across the board, and if these numbers aren't a wake-up call to the auto manufacturers that are still taking their time transitioning to electric vehicles, then I don't know what it's going to take. In the final two charts, we're going to be looking at total global EV sales. In the first chart, we're going to look at top selling EVs from January to August in 2021. And it's no surprise that the Tesla Model 3 and Model Y easily lead the field, while the $5,000 Hongguang Mini takes second place. The VW ID4 and ID3 both make the top 8, but interestingly, 4 out of the top 8 models are Chinese. In the final chart, we will again look at global EV sales. However, this chart will be referring to plug-in sales, so both pure EVs and plug-in hybrids. Again, Tesla is leading the way, while it can be debated as to who's in second place. Again, 4 out of the top 8 selling brands are Chinese. And remember, in 2010, Volvo became a subsidiary of Chinese manufacturer Geely Holding Group. So that covers Q3, and there'll be a separate episode covering Tesla China in depth coming out soon. So in summary, Tesla is still dominating the global EV market and easily taking top spot in the United States, Europe and China. Other manufacturers like Ford and GM are making moves in the right direction, but as Elon has said so many times, making prototypes and ambitious plans are easy. Scaling manufacturing and production is what's hard. The smallest mistakes can cause major issues, and we're seeing that with the Chevy Bolt recall. So things are only going to get more interesting in the coming quarters, especially as the Tesla Gigafactory in Berlin and Austin come online. So that wraps up this episode, and stay tuned for the next episode of the Tesla documentary series, The Year of 2020, the year when Tesla stock absolutely went through the roof. As always, early access to the Patreons, and until next time, I'll see you guys soon.